As a constitutional law attorney, former senior legal advisor and personal counsel to President Donald J. Trump, Jenna Ellis believes in the rule of law and the importance of integrity in our elections. And she's ready to tackle the big cultural and legal issues facing America. This is the Jenna Ellis Show. Here is your host, Jenna Ellis.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Jenna Ellis Show. I'm Jenna Ellis, and we do not shy away from controversial topics on this show. And I actually never have shied away from controversial topics, as you will see in my previous comments, which were back over 2 years ago, actually, on this very topic that we will discuss today. And that is Derek Chauvin. You will remember him as the police officer that was convicted for murder of George Floyd, who, of course, then later after the toxicology report came out and a few other things about the jury, he is now appealing to the U.S. Supreme Court to get a new trial, a fair trial. And this is after appeals to the Court of Appeals and also the Minnesota Supreme Court have been denied. And so I want to play for you before I bring on my guest today, who wrote a fantastic piece in The American Mind. I want to play for you the audio of what I said on a previous show 2 years ago, April 20th, 2021, on the day that Derek Chauvin was convicted. What I thought then, and then we're going to talk about this with my guest in light of the worldview that I think is absolutely coming out from the left. And this case is just one particular example of that. So here is what I said then.
According to Joe Biden, Maxine Waters, BLM Incorporated, and other leftists, the facts don't matter, and true, meaningful justice has been reinvented to mean social justice, the political and cultural retribution for viewpoint sins of the day. Derek Chauvin had already been convicted in the court of public opinion as early as last summer, and it doesn't matter to the left that our justice system requires the state to prove each and every element of the alleged offense beyond any and all reasonable doubt. It only matters that the nation is emotionally and politically charged. Social justice carries with it the philosophy and political idea of corporate guilt. Derek Chauvin is white, George Floyd is black, so Chauvin is implicitly and automatically guilty of racism, so he must be punished. He must be made to pay for the sins of white people collectively. Social justice ignores the rule of law in favor of the rule of emotional, corporate, automatic guilt. This is what the leftists mean when Biden says things like, "I hope they reach the right verdict." The trial is nothing more than a show to them. Their worldview says that Chauvin is automatically guilty. Social justice is nothing more than revenge for perceived collective harms. But that's not what this trial was about. Chauvin was not on trial for being white, the alleged sins of every slave owner in American history, or the perceived systematic racism of America. Chauvin was on trial for a very specific set of crimes. He was found guilty on all charges. But does anyone really think that the jury wasn't influenced by the social justice warriors?
All right, so we'll be right back with commentary and more with my good friend Egg Nationalist and his piece, We Need to Talk About Derek.
With inflation, the banking world collapse, and everything that Joe Biden is doing not to protect America, you need to make sure to secure your financial health, especially in retirement. And hey, if you're a millennial like me, that actually is sooner than you think. You need to start now, even if you are a millennial or a Gen Zer, to make sure that your financial health is actually healthy when we get to retirement. And Legacy Precious Metals has a revolutionary new online platform that allows you to invest in gold and silver online in real time. In a few easy steps, you can open an account online, select your metals of choice, and choose to have them stored in a vault or shipped right to your door. You'll have access to a dashboard where you can track your portfolio growth in real time anytime. You'll see transparent pricing on each coin and bar, and this puts you in complete control of your money. The platform is free to sign up for. Visit legacypminvestments.com and open your account and see this new investing platform for yourself. Gold hedges against inflation and against a volatile stock market. A truly diversified portfolio isn't just more stocks and bonds. but different asset classes. This brand new platform allows you to make investments in gold and silver, no matter how small or large, with just a few clicks. Visit legacypm.com to get started. You can download the free investor's guide, and you can also call Legacy PM Investments to talk to a portfolio expert to get expert answers to customize your personal portfolio. So visit legacypminvestments.com to get started. Tell them that Jenna sent you.
All right, so we need to talk about Derek. That is the headline from Egg Nationalist in The American Mind, which is a publication of the Claremont Institute. And this is a really important topic that I think a lot of conservatives and the right in general just doesn't want to talk about because of the controversy, of course, in 2020 and the summer of riots about how George Floyd in that case sparked a national outrage, in fact, some worldwide outrage. I mean, I remember in Europe that statues were being toppled just because of something that took place in Minnesota here in the United States, which totally doesn't make sense. But here to talk about his piece and why we need to talk about Derek Chauvin, who, of course, was the police officer who was convicted of the murder of George Floyd and is now appealing to the U.S. Supreme Court, is our good friend Egg Nationalist, who is an anon on social media and a good friend of the show. So, Egg, welcome back.
It's wonderful to be back, Jenna. Thank you.
Yeah, so this is a really fascinating piece, and give me your breakdown in terms of why, and I think you're right, we do need to talk about Derek Chauvin.
Well, so first of all, people probably don't know that Derek Chauvin has for some time been trying to appeal his conviction for the third-degree murder of George Floyd. So he took his appeal, first of all, to the Minnesota Court of Appeals, where it was turned down, and then he tried to take it to the Minnesota Supreme Court. They turned it down. So now he's trying to take it to the National Supreme Court. And the article really is about what might actually happen if the Supreme Court decides to consider Derek Chauvin's case. And the thing is, I think fundamentally people are forgetting the insanity around, or people have forgotten the insanity around the case. And it raises it raised at the time, and it continues to raise all sorts of very disquieting questions about the possibility of getting a fair trial in America in very particular cases, in particular in cases of supposed white on black violence, any kind of case where you have a white defendant accused of violence against a black person, as in the case of Derek Chauvin and George Floyd. And during Derek Chauvin's appeal in the Minnesota Court of Appeals, interestingly, the prosecution actually admitted that it would have been impossible to move Derek Chauvin's trial anywhere else in the state of Minnesota, because it just would have been impossible to avoid, the media frenzy. And that was a central part of Derek Chauvin's contention, that he just couldn't get a fair trial at that time because of the way that the media had been whipped up, because of the fact that the courthouse was defended by National Guard troops. It was just impossible to find a jury that wasn't prejudiced against him. And in effect, the prosecution in the Court of Appeals case admitted that. And so, as I say, it raises very disquieting questions about the possibility of a fair trial for certain individuals in America. And it's a problem that I think is only going to get worse.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. I had said at the time when I was actually doing a separate podcast, I had said at the time that this case wasn't so much about the actions of this specific police officer. It was more about the collective so-called white guilt that the leftists like to impose upon a society that is trying to be informed by critical race theory, which is stemming from cultural Marxism. And this case in particular, in the summer of 2020 and how everything unfolded, was much more about the overall view of social justice than it was about trying one individual for a specific set of circumstances. And if we go back and we actually look at this particular appeal and some of the things, just for example, what the jury didn't disclose before they served several members of the jury, a few of the things that are legal bases to get a new trial. Typically, it's very fascinating to me, just from a legal perspective, that the Court of Appeals and the Minnesota Supreme Court declined to even hear a further appeal. And I think this does raise a lot of questions about the merit of a system that is supposed to be for justice, and justice is supposed to be blind. But how justice has, in some cases, and I think this is one case, really has not been blinded to the greater social issues that are plaguing American society today. And one of those is critical race theory and social justice. So let's talk about the current composition of the Supreme Court, because that, in my view, is going to be really fascinating to see if they will accept this appeal and actually grant a writ of cert and hear this, and if the consideration of potential fallout in terms of whether that's riots, protests, whatever it is, if that will weigh into the justice's view at all. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so this is a very, very interesting time in the history of the Supreme Court. So we have nominally a conservative majority, and the Supreme Court has shown that they're not averse to handing down decisions that go totally against the liberal grain. And obviously the case that comes to mind is Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health Organization, which overturned Roe v. Wade. I mean, that was, we've been told, oh, this is coming as soon as the Supreme Court, turns conservative, then of course they're gonna try and overturn Roe v. Wade. But I don't actually think that many people really thought that it would happen, and then it did, and they did it, and so that at the very least, suggests that the Supreme Court is now in a position where it will consider cases that will totally go against the direction of progress as liberals see it. So on the face of things, at least, then yes, I mean, I see no reason why they wouldn't take up Derek Chauvin's case. But then what you have to consider is what happened in 2020, the unprecedented racial rioting that took place. I mean, rioting on a scale that America had never seen, that did enormous damage that compounded the terrible economic and social effects of the pandemic and made life much, much harder for small businesses and for hardworking Americans. You have to think about that. There absolutely would be riots again. And the thing is, the riots in 2020 were whipped up by Democrat politicians, and they would be whipped up again. And you only need to look at the fallout from the Dobbs v. Jackson's Women's Health Organization decision to see that actually a lot of Democrat politicians are quite happy to do that. AOC, for instance, she was when Judge Kavanaugh, in particular, Judge Kavanaugh was a big target of protests around the Dobbs decision because of course of the Christine Blasey Ford fiasco in advance of his admission to the Supreme Court. Now she was laughing and joking about the fact that Kavanaugh was harassed in restaurants and that he had to had to leave restaurants and people were constantly bugging him. And then of course somebody turned up. Actually, this was before the decision. This was when there was a leak, and it was suggested that the Supreme Court was going to overthrow Roe v. Wade. Somebody turned up at Kavanaugh's house with a gun and with masking tape and was arrested and admitted, I was going to kill Judge Kavanaugh and then kill myself. So this is a dangerous time, and politicians on the left are totally happy to intimidate and browbeat judges and to weaponize the legal system. And so that would absolutely, I think that would have to be a consideration for the Supreme Court when it made its decision whether or not to, or when it makes its decision whether or not to hear the Chauvin case.
which I think is so incredibly untenable and unfortunate in the history of our nation. I mean, this is exactly why we have institutions of government, and particularly a judiciary that is supposed to be fair, impartial, unbiased, and not take into consideration social sentiment, any animus against a particular party of the case. I mean, any of these things should not weigh into the legal decision making and opinion rendering of the Supreme Court justices, but we know that they're not impervious to the world around them. They still live in this country as well. And I think it's a fascinating contemplation here because they would have to know that this is what the left does, and what the left really does best is to try to tear down our social institutions of government, like the judiciary, with exactly the examples that you just gave. And that's what they love to do best. So this would be simply a pretext for these racial grievance machines, as you term them in your article. I think that's a great description, is a monstrous racial grievance machine that's ready to be fired up at a moment's notice. Its most visible organs being groups like Black Lives Matter. I mean, so all of these things are in a sense playing into the left's playbook. But at the same time, at what point then do the justices say, well, we want to show our independence and we want to completely disregard that, like they did with the Dobbs opinion? Even the leak draft of the Dobbs opinion did not deter or dissuade them from making their judgment and making that a very broad opinion that overturned Roe versus Wade. It was the right constitutional opinion. But there's another factor here that I also want to get your take on, because interestingly, if the justices took up this appeal, in terms of the Supreme Court composition, it tends to be that the conservative wing of the branch, or the conservative wing of the Supreme Court, and as opposed to the leftist branch, tends to be not as sympathetic to criminal cases in general, whether or not there are criminal cases that they ultimately reverse. Of course, that happens, but it's been long commented by a lot of members of the legal profession that we don't have defense attorneys that ultimately get on the Supreme Court. And we have former prosecutors, but we don't have former defense attorneys, or former public defenders. I think actually Justice Jackson is one of the first, if not the first, that has the background that she does. And I think that was a factor in the Biden administration's decision to nominate her, beyond the fact that she's a woman and she's Black and all those things that they can't define, but obviously they do define, because it's social politicking that way anyway. But my question to you is, do you think that whole cadence of how the Supreme Court generally treats criminal defendants could factor in here? Because I could see the Supreme Court taking this up and then ultimately ratifying the conviction, so that and not that they would do that knowingly just to have some kind of social justice, but that they would take it up knowing that it's likely to be predisposed to that particular outcome anyway.
Yes, I'm no legal expert, so I can't talk as a legal expert. But yes, I think that there are so many factors involved here, and it may very well be the last time that a case like this sort of comes before the Supreme Court. I don't know. I think the politics and society are changing so quickly now that it's really quite difficult to keep up. I think it's worth noting that this is a case that concerns far more than just Derek Chauvin, and that's something that I try to bring across in the article. This isn't just about Derek Chauvin. This is about the left's modus operandi now in particular kinds of legal cases that it has a deep interest in. The use of judicial intimidation, muddying the waters, the kind of things that we saw when Clint Ludwig went on CNN with Don Lemon and called his grandfather, who had been accused of attempted murder, the attempted murder of Ralph Yarl, called his grandfather a racist, all that kind of stuff, where they're muddying the water. It's about that, but it's also about, I think, an attempt to refound America as a different kind of nation, as a nation whose sole purpose, or whose main purpose, is radical racial politics and redistribution. And this is what we see with the 1619 Project, for instance, where you redate the American founding to 1619. Why? Because that's when the first slave ships brought the first Africans to America as slaves. That's when the American nation began. That's what America is about. Actually, America isn't about the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. It's about racial injustice. And these figures, like George Floyd in particular, are essentially the martyrs to the cause. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and other figures like that are the martyrs to the cause. They're the saints, the founders almost of this new racialized vision of America. And so the Supreme Court has a choice to rule not only on Derek Chauvin's case, but also on this radical new vision of an America that's much more like Zimbabwe or South Africa than anything the founding fathers ever envisaged.
Yeah, and I think you're completely correct that this case in particular is one that, if justice is not followed in terms of a fair trial, and those of us with the opinion that Chauvin did not get a fair trial for the reasons that he raises in his appeal, would like to see the Supreme Court follow American jurisprudence and our U.S. Constitution in all of the protections in a criminal prosecution that are afforded to every defendant. There is not a carve out in the U.S. Constitution for, well, if this is social justice, then there's a different set of standards than there is if this is, quote unquote, regular or traditional justice. And that's really what the left is trying to do here. And as you point out in the article, Raw Egg, this is really about the left taking this whole critical race theory and other Black martyr figures in recent years, and even like Trayvon Martin as well, and you mentioned Breonna Taylor, but George Floyd as kind of one of the biggest saints of the radical left in terms of this new radicalized mythos of America, as you call it. And I love how you ended the piece where you're saying, in truth, whether the Supreme Court has a part to play in the deconstruction and discrediting of the hagiography that has been created for George Floyd is anybody's guess. The court could just as easily ignore the case if its members care about their personal safety and that of their families, as well as the continuance of the institution in its current form or any form at all. They would probably do well to choose another case instead. But nothing can change the fact that if the true promise of the American founding is to be preserved, the new counter histories and their sacred figures must be challenged and ultimately revealed for what they truly are. And I think that conclusion is really what this particular case is all about. And I would hope that the Supreme Court, in its current composition, I mean, we kind of know what the three extreme leftists would do with this case. But if the majority of the court is willing to set aside the whole notion of social justice and critical race theory, and they're willing to employ genuine, true, legitimate, meaningful justice as our founders intended and codified in the protections of our Bill of Rights, then they should take up this case and they should require a fair trial. So in just the last 2 minutes I have with you here, what would you say then if this is left as it is, what is the commentary on where we are headed as a country if ultimately someone like Derek Chauvin is simply a victim of social justice and critical race theory, and our highest institution just turns a blind eye to that?
Well, as I said a moment ago, I think that America will be heading very definitely towards a situation that makes it look much more like post-apartheid South Africa or Zimbabwe. So we're talking about a nation with a two-tiered justice system that is committed to the redistribution of power and wealth and land, and that will tolerate injustice as long as it benefits anybody but white people. And that's the key thing, I think. I mean, this is basically what we're looking at is what Sam Francis called anarcho-tyranny. And that's a situation in which basically the tax-producing white middle classes will be hemmed in, they'll be controlled by all sorts of different means, by prejudicial laws, high taxation, which will then be redistributed to minority groups, and not that they will be minorities anymore. And then you have a kind of managed chaos that sort of terrorizes the middle classes. So you have endemic crime that goes almost totally unpunished. I mean, that is the bleak future, I think, that actually is coming for America if this new racialized refounding, this new mythos of America as a radically racist nation that needs to atone for its history isn't overthrown.
Yeah, and this is a completely different worldview and ideology and social justice and critical race theory than what America was founded upon. The true nature of actual justice, meaningful justice. Social justice is nothing more than revenge, really, for perceived collective harms, and we're seeing how that is playing out. If the ultimate source of justice, civil justice in our nation, with the U.S. Supreme Court as the court of last resort, as it's known, doesn't step in. So it'll be very interesting to see how all of this plays out. And we need to continue to stand up for true, meaningful justice rather than social justice and call out the worldview and ideology distinctions. So thanks so much, Raw Egg, and for your commentary. And the piece, again, is in The American Mind, which is a publication of the Claremont Institute. And the headline is, "We Need to Talk About Derek." So thanks so much for joining, and look forward to talking to you soon.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, Jenna.
With inflation, the banking world collapse, and everything that Joe Biden is doing not to protect America, you need to make sure to secure your financial health, especially in retirement. And hey, if you're a millennial like me, that actually is sooner than you think. You need to start now, even if you are a millennial or a Gen Zer, to make sure that your financial health is actually healthy when we get to retirement. And Legacy Precious Metals has a revolutionary new online platform that allows you to invest in gold and silver online in real time. In a few easy steps, you can open an account online, select your metals of choice, and choose to have them stored in a vault or shipped right to your door. You'll have access to a dashboard where you can track your portfolio growth in real time anytime. You'll see transparent pricing on each coin and bar, and this puts you in complete control of your money. The platform is free to sign up for. Visit legacypminvestments.com and open your account and see this new investing platform for yourself. Gold hedges against inflation and against a volatile stock market. A truly diversified portfolio isn't just more stocks and bonds, but different asset classes. This brand new platform allows you to make investments in gold and silver, no matter how small or large, with just a few clicks. Visit legacypm.com to get started. You can download the free investor's guide, and you can also call Legacy PM Investments to talk to a portfolio expert to get expert answers to to customize your personal portfolio. So visit legacypminvestments.com to get started. Tell them that Jenna sent you.
On MyPillow's 20-year anniversary, with over 80 million MyPillows sold, Mike Lindell wants to thank each and every one of you by giving you the lowest price in history on his MyPillows. You will receive a queen-size MyPillow for only $19.98. The regular price is $69.98 and just $10 more for a king size. You'll receive deep discounts on all MyPillow products, such as bed sheets, mattress toppers, pet beds, mattresses, my slippers, which I love, and so much more. This is the time to try out some of the amazing products you've had your eye on from MyPillow. So go to mypillow.com and enter promo code Jenna to receive this amazing offer on the queen size MyPillow for $19.98. You can go to mypillow.com or call 1-800-564-8475. Be sure to use the promo code Jenna. This offer comes with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money back guarantee. It's time to start getting the quality sleep you deserve. This offer comes with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee. It's time to start getting the quality sleep you deserve. Go to mypillow.com, use the promo code Jenna.